Okay, so before we use any electronic items on the boat, there must be power on. So just to remind you, that's down here, the two yellow switches. There they are. So they need to be on, and that sends power to the boat. And to get these screens on, the two screens that we'll be looking at today, these toggle switches here, they need to be over to the right. So those toggle switches over to the right, and then that powers up the screen units themselves. All right. So a bit of a chat about the screens. They auto load to the radar being on that side, and the electronic chart, or the CMAP, if we want to use simple language, on this side, the port side of the boat. How you operate either of those screens and the functions on them is by the device just on the side here, which you pull out, holding the unit, and you can see it's got rollerball and 3 buttons above it. So I'll be referring to these buttons by the numbers through this video. So make a mental note. So it's from the rollerball itself, going up, button 1, button 2, button 3. So I'll be using that to tell you which button I'm pressing as we go and start to love and learn this system. All right. So in the background then, this is called SIMS. What does that stand for? It's Ship's Information Management System. It's across the whole fleet in the RNLI, so different boats have different versions of this. And we, in our station here, we've got the same version, but just one of the boats, the bigger boat, the Atlantic, has more inputs, and those inputs are here on the right-hand side. So you'll note that there's a radar on the back. We've got a DF on this boat, and we've got the chart plotter. On the D-class, we don't have a radar and a DF. All right, so those are those there. But the SIMS menu in itself is accessible by button 2. So that brings you into what we've got going on here. And it shows you those inputs on the right-hand side. Very subtly, some colors behind those. A green icon means that you have full control of whatever it is. So in this case, the chart app, we've got full control of that. So you can see all of the yellow tiles are active on that one. So that means we are green, full control. If it's like a brown or an orange icon, like this one, the radar, means that you've got access to see it, but you don't have control of it. Means that the other person over there has got the full control, and you've just got view only. If it's grayed out, it means that there is no control to it. And if you've got this one, you can see it's sort of half green, half red. Anything red means that there's a problem. And in this case, you've got a fault with the DF. And I know what that is. It's because it's switched off. So if I turn it on, it should, there it goes back to green. All right, so also in the SIMS menu, what have you got in here? You've got, sticking with problems, you've got the alarm list. So you scroll up to alarm list, button 1, and it comes up with all the alarms. So in this case, our GPS receiver has a fault. Well, it's not, it's because we're inside and it can't see the sky. So that's why we've got no GPS position coming on here. We've also got, obviously, no information relative to that. What else have we got in here? We've got all the stuff that Joe, the mechanic, would do sort of over in this area. So updating it, putting new things in it, etc., etc. You can flick it into something called Night Palette, although I don't really use that myself. Yeah, you can calibrate certain things as well. Sticking with Night Palette, probably if it's dark, what I would use is this dial down here. So if you just turn that, it makes the screen go dim. That's probably more easier to find than any of that. Cool. This is where we also turn it off, but I'll talk about that at the end anyway. Okay, so this session predominantly is all about the chart itself. So to get over to the chart, it's button 1, followed by button 2, and that brings you... Okay, so I forgot to mention, if you wanted to take function of any of these icons, you hover over it. If you press button 3, it puts a blue box around it. Can you see that? And then you wiggle down to the bottom right hand side, it says take function, and then you press button 1. What that does then, it flicks it from orange to green. Now that means you have got full control. So yeah, apologies, forgot to mention that one earlier on. Anyway, let's get into the chart. So just a reminder, it's button 1, button 2 to get into the chart, and that brings that up. Now, since I've been sat here, actually, the GPS has managed to get a signal. So we've got the picture up. You can see that Porthcawl is on the screen. Right in the middle, if I press this over here, oh, Nightbee's over there, look, Nightbee and Lily. Right in the middle, you've got a pink circle. Circle is you. And providing you've got a GPS position, that should show up on the display. Providing this button here, now this button is one of the most influential tiles in this whole system. Based on whatever setting is on, will vary how the rest of the system operates, subject to how that button is pressed. Now you can see there's a pink circle in the middle of that crosshatch. So that term is called being on track. And what that does is it puts the pink circle right in the center of your chart all of the time once it's on track. However, if it's off track, you may not necessarily have your pink circle in the middle. If I make it look like this, so over towards Reek Point, you can now see that you haven't got a pink circle in the middle. So just be cautious of that. So obviously the image you're referencing may not necessarily be relative to where you're positioned. So just double check that button here, this button here, track, and just make sure you're back on track. There we go. That puts us there, right in the middle of the display, and we're there. Some other cool features then. We've got all these options on the right hand side. This is like your menu. Predominantly the screen is your CMAP or your chart. You are in the middle, and then your cursor moves around the CMAP, gives you information that's relative to that point. So for example, if I wanted to find out how far away the marina, which you'll all know from your local knowledge, is from where I am currently, if I just move the cursor over to the marina, it's therefore giving me some information about that. So it's giving me a bearing of 0 to 8 degrees. It's giving me a range of 0.1 nautical miles. So it's telling me a bit of information without actually doing anything other than wiggling the cursor around. I should say I'm moving the cursor by using the rollerball there. Some other information that's quite useful without doing anything. Down in the bottom right hand side, we've got some information. See you later, buddy. Got some information down in the bottom right hand side over here. So we have POS, which is position. That is a lat and long of, yes, you guessed it, the pink circle where you are. So that is your lat and long, latitude and longitude, the position of where you're at. You've got the boat's heading, which is currently, we're pointing 125 degrees, which, from where we are is obviously out towards the slipway. It's telling us we've got a speed of 0.5 knots, which is quite interesting, because we're definitely not moving. But that's probably just the GPS receiver really struggling to work out where we are. That's probably why that's doing that. It's also giving us a depth as well, which it's currently telling us it's 2 meters under the boat, which it isn't. So yeah, just be cautious of some of these numbers. We've got time, which is 5:20 UTC. So we're now into British summertime. So you just have to add an hour onto that number. Oh, there's Phil Misson's just walked in. You just have to add an hour onto that time. That time is never adjusted. So whereas you're in your car, you probably change the clock when we go into summertime. That time is not adjusted on here. So just be aware if you're looking to get back for Sunday lunch, it's an hour out this time of year. Okay, so that's some information. Right, how do we use it? So let's start by keeping us on track, and I want to talk you through some of these features. So sometimes we might want to zoom this in and out. So being on track, zoom is quite easy. If you come up to this icon, it says zoom, button 1, select zoom, which opens up some tiles above it. So you can either zoom in or out. So if I zoom out, you'll see more of our patch starts to show within the screen. And then as you zoom in, and I'm doing this by pressing button 1, by the way, you start to get a closer image relative to where you are. So it's important to note, whenever you do zoom out, you lose a whole host of information. So you can start to see there, we've already lost the marina, and actually we don't have as many numbers around us, which you'll know from car sessions, are all the depths, chart datum. Every time you zoom out, you lose them. And you can zoom out quite a long way, actually. You could probably get, here we go, we've got most of the Bristol Channel there, most of Wales, and yeah, now we've actually got no depth information whatsoever. So that is a limitation of this system. The more you zoom out, the less information that you've got to hand. All right. So that's zooming out, in and out, using the on-track function. Now, caution, if you are off track, and say, for example, you're elsewhere in the chart, I don't know, down towards Ogmore by Sea, and go over there, and I wanted to now zoom in this area to get some more information. If I now repeat what I just said, so up to zoom, button 1 presses zoom, you don't have the option to zoom in and out here using those two tiles. You've got instead is the cursor icon just to the right. And if I press button 1 on that, it changes my icon to a very subtle plus. But if I press button 3 on that, it changes my icon to a very subtle minus. Now back on the chart, if I press button 1 now, it zooms out at that location. Going back to my cursor, pressing button 1, changing it to a positive icon. If I press button 1 now, it'll zoom in on that particular location. So that's a bit of a brain fart, just something you've got to get your head around. Principally, it's because you're off track. So remember what I said at the start, this button is influential over a lot of stuff in this system. By coming off track, it means that you don't have the zoom in and out function. You've got to do this. Yeah, so it's button 1 or button 3, depending on what you want to zoom in or out, and then button 1 on the chart. I'm a firm believer, I kind of like to be on track most of the time. You'll probably get that theme through this session. So coming back on track, if I do press that now, it puts pink circle back in the middle. And now when I press zoom, I can zoom in and out nice and simply. All right. Okay, hopefully you're with me so far. If I want to stop doing things, like you can see there, my cursor now has still got a historic plus on it. If ever you want to stop anything in this system, if you go to the chart or the CMap side of the screen and press button 3, you go back to your arrow. All right, so that just gets you back out of all of that sort of stuff. Okay, let's use this system then for what we'll probably use 95% of the time, is getting the lifeboat to a position which has been passed in the format of a latitude and longitude. If you don't know what one of those is, please go and speak to Carl. I won't waste my time talking about that on this video, but a latitude and longitude, yeah, speak to Carl or anyone and find out if they can help you understand what that is. But yeah, imagine the scenario, you're tasked to something. Oh, Nipey and Lily are back. Making a film, Nipey? Yeah. So your task to position, Coast Guard are giving you a Latin long. How do you put it into this? So scroll over to, see you later, buddy. Scroll over to the right-hand side to this icon here, CSLTY, means casualty. If you press button 1 on that, come back over to the display and position it onto the chart roughly where you think you're going to be going. And I'll tell you the significance of that in just a bit. But if we're roughly going out towards where Ferry Boy is, let's put it out over there. And press button 1. So when you press button 1, this screen opens, which is the editing screen. So based on the information the Coast Guard has just given you, all of those numbers as part of the Latin long, this is where you now adjust where it is. So 51 degrees, typically that's going to be the same each time. And then you may have to amend the numbers thereon. So to amend the numbers, you go over the box that's relative to what you need to change. So if it's the minutes box, which is this one, you press button 1 once you're over it. You come down and you can increase or decrease by 1 numerical. So 28 to 29 to 30, 31, or coming down 30, 29, 28, 27. I'll put it back up to 28 actually. And that's the same for any of these boxes. So if I press that one, button 1, come down, increase by 1, decrease by 1 on those ones. If it's quite a radical change to the numbers, you can increase by 10, which is that one, up to 32, or decrease by 10, which is that one, down over there. The same for the longitude boxes, so how far east and west we are. Again, you can amend these just by selecting it button 1 and adjusting it down the bottom there. When you're happy with the number and it looks right, double check it with everyone else. You can come down here and press accept. And then that puts that on the display for you there. With that on the display, that cannot be moved around where it is now unless you go back into it. So to go back into it, to amend it, hover over the top of it. It's button 1, button 3, brings up this menu, and you can edit it up there just by pressing button 1, and that takes you back into what we just saw. All right. Some other things you can do then, once you've gone into the properties menu, you can delete it, or you can do some other bits and bobs here, which we rarely do. So I won't bother going into that. So press accept, happy to keep it, and it's there. Now, the icon normally looks like this, so just a blue icon around it. At the moment, it's not giving us information. So for it to give us some information, i.e. a direction to it, press button 1 over the top of it, puts a grey box around it. A grey box around anything will give you a straight line bearing and information to it. That information's on the right hand side, and it's telling me there casualty is where we're heading towards, and we've got bearing to it is 162 degrees, distance to it is 0.35 miles, and time at the speed that we're doing, it gives you a time as well. Important to note here, another limitation, so that's obviously a straight line from where we're currently sat to that. The system doesn't know that we've got all these hazards in between, i.e. the boathouse wall, the steps, the pier, the rocks, and anyone else that's down there. So we've got a couple of things that you just need to consider before going straight line. Oh, we got more people, Mary and Simon coming in. No, it's okay. We've had so many people drop in, it's been funny. So yeah, just be cautious. You don't just steam along at a straight line because there may be things in the way. But again, use your local knowledge and you'll be fine. Okay. So yeah, you can only have one casualty at any one time. If you need to have an additional casualty, then yeah, the helm needs to make the call that we need to end going to this one and we go to the next one. All right. So again, just to remind you, over the top, button 1, button 3 opens the menu. You can either edit it here, or what I'm going to do right now is delete it. Am I happy to delete? Over the top, button 1, yeah, and that's gone. 95% of the time, that's what you'll use the system for, and it's quite a handy one. Okay, another cool icon that's over here as well is this button here, Find. If you want to zoom to the closest zoom quickly and put you in the center, that's what that button does. So button 1 on there gives you the maximum amount of information that's close around you in terms of depths, rocks, piers, marinas, etc. Without having to do the zoom faff. So that just brings you nice and close and central if you wanted to go there. What else have we got here? We've got a pencil function. I rarely use that, but essentially it allows you to draw straight lines on here. So selecting it, button 1, coming over to the chart, pressing button 1 drops one end. Then as you wiggle away, you can draw a line. And then the box next to it then gives you a distance of that line and a bearing. So if I move it round, you'll see the bearing is changing there as I do so. All right. Button 1 stops you doing it anymore. And then if you want to stop dropping lines on the screen, it's button 3. Remember, button 3 stops doing anything as part of the chart. Okay, last little nugget I just want to talk about is how to put a route in. All right, so that's this icon here. So if we've got a number of different things that we need to consider as part of going around, i.e. rocks and buoyage and things, you can put in what's called a route. So it's like a number of different versions of a casualty, if you like, all strung together. So how I build a route, say for example, if I'm looking to plan to go from here and do a lap around Tusker and then come back in towards, I don't know, the point here, Reef Point. I get people to zoom out so you can see the full picture or the full plan of what you want to go and do. We're going to do this in 2 phases. We're going to get down and dirty first and do something called just a ring fence, where we just drop it down. And then the second phase then is going in, tidying up, making sure we're not going anywhere where we shouldn't be going. All right. So I've zoomed out. I can see Tusker Rock. I can see where I start, where I want to start, and I can see where I finish. I come over to the route icon. If I press button 1, that brings up the start of the route icon. And I'm going to bring it over to the chart. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to press button 1 roughly where I want to start, and then as I move around, I'm just going to drop them roughly where I think I need to drop them, basing it on local knowledge and the safe nav as we go around. Interesting feature there. I haven't talked about this pink square that's going on around the screen. If I go outside the pink square, it automatically starts moving the chart for me. Which when it's cold, it's not very good. It can be delayed and jumpy. So just be aware of that. It can cause you a bit of a frustration, but yeah, try and work inside the pink square if you can. So coming up around Tusker Buoy, south of Tusker Buoy, I'm going to drop another one there. I'm going to come over this way. I'm going to check out what's going on over in Ogmore by Sea. And then let's come back down here, and each time I want to drop one of these new waypoints, they're called, these red triangles, all I'm doing is I'm pressing button 1 every time I want to drop one, and that brings us back over here. There we go. So when I want to finish dropping waypoints, because it'll keep adding them until I tell it to stop, basically. Remember, button 3 stops anything. So if you press button 3, that stops adding it anymore. And you would have seen the screen jump back then towards the left. And that's because we're on track. So it's moved us back to the middle. All right. So we've got our route. It's in basic form. Now what I need to do is just double check that it's not going to cause us any problems. So I'm going to zoom back in, and I'm going to work my way along the route. So for this, I'm going to come off track so I can steer away from where we are. Now, I can see this waypoint is not ideal for us. It's tucked behind a pier, maybe in some surf. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it. Now, to move it, it's sort of a two-handed job, which holding this camera is going to be quite interesting. Let's see if I can do it without actually. But essentially what you want to do is hover over the top of the triangle, which is the waypoint. You're going to press and hold button 1. And then with the rollerball then, you'll be able to move it around. You can see it moving there. When you're happy with where it is, if I pop it out here, past the surf line, just release button 1, and then that pops it into position just there. All right. Now, can you see there's a grey box around it? That's not ideal. Remember, a grey box navigates you to a waypoint. So I'm going to come off that. Let's get rid of that grey box by pressing button 1 on the screen. There he goes, disappears. So we're going to scan through this route just to make sure it's okay. Now I'm outside of the pink square. Because I'm outside of the pink square now, if I press and hold button 1, it'll move along. And I release button 1, it stops. If now this one's all right, to be fair. Means we get past Ferry Buoy and it's all clear, there's no issues there. So let's carry on down here. Again, press and hold button 1, outside, it'll track that way. You can see there's no hazards along that route. Press and hold button 1 there, we're okay. Press and hold button 1, no issues there, so a little bit shallower, but still in good, safe water. Press and hold button 1. All good, all good. Okay, so, because I'm not going to hold you on here and bore you to death, what I'll do is I'll assume that I've done that for the full route, and I'm happy to go. However, what I want to do now is add an additional waypoint in here, just to make it a little bit more safe. So, how do we add a waypoint in? If you hover over the waypoint that's closest to where you want to work to, so say this one here, if I press button 1, puts a grey box around it. If I go back over to route and press button 1, it now allows me to put a waypoint either that side of the waypoint or that side of the waypoint and build it in. So if I pop it up, say out here for sake, button 1 drops that down and there's that new additional waypoint in. Just be cautious though, it'll continue to drop waypoints unless you press, if you remember it, button 3 stops you adding anything more. All right. If I wanted to remove a waypoint from the sequence, fairly similar, but this time what you do is hover over that waypoint, you press button 1, followed by button 3, brings up this menu here, waypoint properties. You can do a whole host of things in here. You can change what it looks like. You can lock it so that it can't be moved. Or in this case, what you can do is delete it. Are you sure you want to delete that waypoint? Yes. So yeah, that's all gone. Okay, final thing then is once you're all happy with your route, is making that route active. All right, so if we zoom out, we've got our route just over there with a helicopter flying over us. You can probably hear in the background, there it goes. You've got the route there. Currently it's pink or red, which means it's not giving the helm on their little screens up there any information. If you wanted to do that, you head over to the line specifically, onto the line. You press button 1, button 3, and it brings up this menu here. A couple of things you can do in here. You can delete the whole route, which we don't want to do. You can lock it into position, which is quite nice. You can reverse it, so it goes the other way around. You can adjust this thing here called cross-track error. Again, I'm not going to explain what it is on this video. If you don't know what cross-track error is, find someone in the station that can talk you through it. But ultimately, it either makes the route we're driving along really wide or really small, subject to where you want to go. So to adjust that is obviously increase, decrease, such as that. To make it active, you've got this icon here, the ship's wheel. It currently says off. If you press it button 1, it greys out all these other options, means you can't adjust them. And then the green tick makes the line look green. So the line is green on there. And then that will give some information to those screens, the Raymarines up on that screen. Only when the lifeboat is close enough to the line, i.e. it's within that cross-track error, and you are driving within 45 degrees of the direction the route is intending you to go. If you're outside of either one of those parameters, there'll be no information given to those screens, nor will you have any information down in this right-hand side. That's why, at the moment, sat in the lifeboat station here, we've got no information, because we're not within the cross-track error of the route, nor are we driving along in the direction which is towards Ferry Buoy. So no information. You can have any number of routes in the system, but you can only ever have one active state. So that's the green line. So you can have lots and lots of red routes all over the place, but only one that's green. Turn it off green then. So say if you wanted a different route to become active, you've got to turn this one off. So run you through that. It's button 1, button 3 on the line, brings up this menu again. Back to the ship's wheel, it's currently on. If you press button 1 on that, it disengages the route. Well, it asks you first, yes, I want to, button 1, and that opens it up. So if I do go back now to the screen, it should be red. There it is. Okay, I think that's enough for now. It's gusting 30 minutes on the clock there. So last thing I'll just say is, how do we turn it off? Really try not to just flick the switches. It doesn't do the systems any good. So to turn it off, you've got to go into Sims. It's button 2, just down the bottom here. You've got shut down. If you press button 1 on that, it asks you, are you prepared to recover to the boathouse? Yes, we are. Scroll up to it, button 1, and scroll down to shut down, and then that's okay. Button 1. You get the white screens of death, and then when it stops flashing at you, then you're good to power down. Shut it down. Yeah, generally as a rule here in this station, we leave those switches over to the right all the time, so they shouldn't really be over to the left. The one that usually causes us a problem is the radar one. If that's over to the left, the radar just doesn't work, so keep them over to the right and it should be fine. There we go. Got some alarms going off, GPS alarms. I think you need to know about alarms. Yeah, so we've got a GPS alarm when it loses the GPS, so you can hear that going there. There'll also be one beeping away from the Raymarine at the front as well at some point. So we've got that. The only other alarm that you'll hear on this boat, as you're aware, is the man overboard alarm, the kill switch. Where is it? There it is, the red kill switch. So that'll give the alarm up over there, the blue, which we can also cancel within this. But I'll show you that on the water. Yeah, we'll go from there. Hopefully that was of interest and of use. And yeah, we'll get afloat and use it as much as we can.